Fresh meat.
I'm a product of the home video boom. As much as I progress and grow in life, my love of the movie-going experience, my origin, my heart if you will, belongs to the adventure that was the video store. I was the first generation of kids that had this massive, well, at the time, collection of stories, actors, and directors to discover at my own pace. Now, I've talked ad nauseum about the importance of the VHS box art cover, but one thing that doesn't get discussed enough is the specific type of double bill that was a byproduct of the video store experience. Not that some of these didn't have a third outing, or that the first is clearly superior, but more that these two felt more organic, more connected. The first two Gremlins, the first two Ghoulies, Ghostbusters 1 and 2, House 1 and 2, Warlock, and of course, Waxwork. Which brings me to one of my favorite sequel directors from the Wild West that was the early 90s, Mr. Anthony Hickox, and his everything but the kitchen sink off the rails follow-up to his first flick, Waxwork. And join me on a defense of what may be one of the most interesting and ballsy continuations ever made, with the cult classic Waxwork II: Lost in Time. I want to thank you guys for watching The Black Sheep, and ask that if you enjoy our shows, please subscribe to our channel right now. Like this video and click on the bell so you can be notified each time a new video goes up. And now back to the show. Waxwork still stands as a great cult classic that is a perfect mix of late 80s charm, practical effects, some great, some not, and an inventive horror plot that encompasses many other genres. To me, it's a solid VHS era classic that was on a solid rotation, and also happened to introduce me to the eccentric director Anthony Hickox. It had Billy Peltzer, Zach Galligan playing against type, and gave some great and unexpected gore. But Waxwork along with its bizarre sequel were in tandem for me. Again, to be clear, the first one is a tighter, focused, and all-around better entry. But Waxwork II: Lost in Time pulls a bit more at my nostalgia heartstrings. And rewatching a bit as I got older, there are more than a few things that make this sequel a worthy entry that did not play it safe. This starts off right as the first one ends. Mark and Sarah, now played by Monica Schnarr, escape the burning Waxwork Museum, catch a suspicious and oddly convenient taxi riding down a California suburb street, and make a pact to forget what just happened. Because honestly, they're just happy to be alive. Except the hand that survived at the end of the first now goes full Evil Dead 2 and kills Sarah's stepfather, who she calls stepfather.
I can explain, stepfather,
Weird. And is played by the all-time drunk and all-around great guy, George Buck Flower. And for some reason, Sarah is no longer rich, but is now poor. Also weird. Original actress Deborah Foreman didn't return because she was dating Hickox during the first film, and had since broken up. Their separation had been called, complicated. So maybe this has to do with recasting and a bit of a poke. Who knows? But Sarah is then charged with the murder of her stepfather, which leads to our natural time and tonal jump. Since Waxwork 2 was made 4 years after the first, this kind of helps a lot with the change in tone and the look of the actors, as Zach Galligan was looking slightly older. We get a cameo by returning Sir Wilfrid, Mr. Patrick McNee, who was wise enough to record himself before his unfortunate head removal.
Oh my goodness!
Explaining the need for time jumping and time warriors to fight the supernatural evils. And it's here where Waxwork 2 becomes its own. Tonally, this follows what was a bit of a trend at the time, with some sequels expanding the humor, sense of adventure, and adding a pinch of a more family-friendly approach. Now, because it was the 80s, which was a decade of brass balls and a lot of,
Cocaine.
We got untamed creativity with a widescreen push that could not exist today. Ghostbusters 2 put in baby snatching and head on spikes. Bogus Journey goes from hell to heaven and ends with soul. Gremlins 2 is this batshit crazy meta-commentary on sequels that brought everything up to 11. While Waxwork 2 decides to lean far into the whimsical and fantasy element, while also keeping the surprisingly brutal gore from the original. It's these different genre changes that give you the whiplash of craziness. 1 minute we're in an Alien ripoff, the next we're experiencing a Vincent Price joint. True to form, Hickox adds an over-the-top love and embellishment for each and every story set within the different subgenres. Frankenstein's entry is kinda cute. Mark playing things more kind and understanding, not wanting to feed the poor monster slop. It's almost sitcom-esque. Then the monster murders Dr. Frankenstein and goes full Evil Dead 2. Then we get the alien ripping off heads, followed by the one and only David Carradine giving sage advice in a Princess Bride-esque story.
Strike once for Lenore, and for all the others who have suffered under the rule of the Master.
And let's not forget Bruce Campbell stealing the movie with his John Loftmore character. This segments its stories a lot more than the first and allows for everything under the sun to happen. And Hickox wisely takes the parody route by skewering everything he loves. Both a laugh and a sincere wink. Tonally things get so damn wacky that I can't help but raise a drink. Jumping into these different mini-movies, we get Hickox doing his embellished versions of horror, sci-fi, and fantasy classics. Or more like cereal in a bag, the generic version, because hey, nobody wants to get sued. The haunting segment gives a prime Bruce Campbell his time to shine. I mean, salt on the wound, guys. Not to mention some inventive camera work. The alien influence segment has the wet industrial look down pat, along with the intense and heated exchange from the crew. But it's the last chunk where things slow down and get you comfortable in the whimsical fantasy story where Carl from Die Hard plays the main villain and the one Mark needs to defeat. We get a fast track to a plethora of movie jumps, something Hickox is clearly doing with love. From stopping Jack the Ripper, interrupting Nosferatu with Drew Barrymore. It's one of the most inventive and ridiculous endings, and what I love the most. The 80s cocaine would be proud to see this 90s hodgepodge of subgenres, with bad wigs and comically bad clothes. Mark getting the piece of evidence needed to clear Sarah by cutting off a zombie's hand, while sword fighting Carl from Die Hard, in Dawn of the Dead, dressed as Tony Manero.
And I ain't got the power anymore.
Even if the fantasy section wears out its welcome, it's here we set up the big bad and the stakes. The ultimate prize, existence. Because, and again spoilers, this dimension is a video game being played by God and the devil. Oh man. Yep. That's what's at stake, man. You gotta love it in a way, you know? Go big or go home. They just don't make them like this anymore. Galligan has that boyish charm. It works as the man trying to free his woman from a castle shtick. A lot of the goofy and enthusiastic charm comes from the adventure that feels like something which is meant for more of a family. Except for this. And that's why I love Waxwork. It's this dueling tones that is all over the map. It's a fascinating watch that holds nothing back, and Waxwork II's only ties to the first film are these two characters. You know, since there isn't a Waxwork museum in the sequel. Good. It's too easy to retread. I'll always appreciate that this decided to aim so damn high it went to space. Seeing this tonal shift while jumping between so much could be suicide. Yet here, it's an entertaining schizophrenic blast. What makes these Waxwork flicks so great is these were never grounded enough to even need a damn shark. It started off already mid-jump. Returning effects artist Bob Keane handles this well and keeps the gore intense and surprising. Yeah, some elements come across a bit too cheap. The monster in the alien section looks like shit, and the spaceship model is bad. I'm talking bad. And then there are the wigs. God, the wigs. But because things are clearly poking fun in more of a parody-esque style, I can't guarantee these cheap additions weren't purposely done. But either way, it doesn't distract from the overall roller coaster of a good time. Waxwork II embraces more of the fantasy aspect from the original, dials it up to 11, and brings the gore along with it. This may not be as slick as part 1, but the thirst for adventure is here, and ends it in a way that promises future adventures with Mark and Sarah. And it's that right there that would have made for a fun trilogy. But at last, it never came to be. Life can be a fickle bitch, and what was left was a two-parter worth exploring.
Seems like the world is moving on. Didn't stop to look around. Didn't give a shit if you're crashing down. You can close your eyes but not your skin. Don't believe what you refuse to see. Won't find a way in. Well, I can't ignore a certain thing.